Hi folks, I'm one of the therox, a designer, developer working on the TypeScript team at Microsoft. After the new TypeScript website shipped, I took a week off to go chill out and study some of the sort of principles of video editing and my personal AV setup. So I'd like to try to talk through what I learned during that week and what my current setup is that helps me go from footage like this.
Trying to find a space for yourself and your work in your environment can be tricky, and that's really something you'll have to try and balance yourself.
To this kind of footage, what you're seeing right now. And so this is a rebase on my current AV setup. So I joined the TypeScript team as a remote engineer. The vast majority of the team is over in Seattle, and I'm here living in New York City. This meant that the majority of my interactions with the rest of the team would be through a webcam and through a mic. So because of that, when I joined, I grabbed a Logitech C922X ProStream webcam and a Blue Yeti mic. The Blue Yeti mic worked out really well, but I wasn't really impressed with the quality of the Logitech. In fact, this is the Logitech recording, and this is using the exact same lighting setup that you've just seen a second ago. I'm recording both at the same time. It's just not really capable of the sort of lower baseline of quality that I'd like to work with, especially for something pre-recorded like this. So my current setup. Let's start with the camera. First and foremost, I use a DSLR. This one is a Canon 250D or a Canon Wearable 3, depending on your nationality. When I started looking for a camera, this Canon was considered the cheapest of the high ends, which could record high quality 4K video. In the end, I never really used the 4K video. I still record everything at 1080. But I wanted to use this camera as a webcam as well. So I use a HDMI capture card to support turning the camera's monitor output, the stuff on the back of the screen, to a camera which a computer can understand and can sort of show things through in apps like Teams or Slack or Zoom. So this decision wasn't without its downsides. The HDMI capture card has a few sort of weird constraints. So if you see here, I get information on screen like the autofocus when it's in recording, and I can have display information on every now and again. But it also shuts itself off after about half an hour, which is a little bit annoying sometimes. But this is definitely good enough for video. If I turn off the autofocus, then you get a sense of what it's normally like without the little record sign in the top corner. I should make sure I get that back on though. So I don't have much advice about cameras other than find something within your price range, find out if it works with something like the Elgato Camlink, which is the HDMI input card I use. And then sort of just mash them together and hope for the best, basically. Who knows, though? Maybe the next generation of DSLRs, given that everybody is now, there's a lot of people working from home, maybe DSLRs will have native support for being used as a webcam, whereas right now you sort of have to use this kind of shim to get HDMI output that then gets put into your camera, that then goes into your computer. It's good enough, but I wouldn't be surprised to see good stuff coming out in the future for that. And then for audio, so I started with a Blue Yeti. This is my Blue Yeti. There is basically two settings on a Blue Yeti, right? There is gain and pattern. A lot of the internet recommends taking the gain and whacking it to the lowest possible, and then solving any problems that come from that with post audio editing. I recorded a few videos like this and it sounded really rough, not a fan. So I did a series of experiments and the end result for me was somewhere about a third up, and then a tiny amount of post-processing. With the pattern, I use Cartioid. It looks like an upside down heart, but effectively it's a directional microphone. So it only cares about sounds that are coming in the direction of me. That kind of means that you have to look out for the logo. You can see how it's dim now, and then it sounds better again because it's directional. So on top of that, my office is a big white room with no windows and nothing to break up echoes. So what I did is, you can first see a lot of the sort of random clutter that's in the room. That clutter is purposefully there. Like, some of it was already there beforehand, but a lot of it is now structured as a way to try and reduce echo inside this room. And then on the other side of my screens is a five couch cushions that are there to act as like foam noise protectors to make it feasible to not have echo and to then not have to do post-processing on the echo. Then to get the best audio from myself, I actually use a kneeling chair. So I use this when I'm recording, so your knees go on that bit. And oops, that is because, one, it is silent, and two, when I was recording with my old band, we eventually just made a rule that is, you are not allowed to do voice recordings sitting down. There's like a sort of general trope in audio recording that you should be standing up if you're going to make definitive, like, authoritative audio. And so this actually puts me in a bodily structure that acts a lot like I'm standing up, but allows me to keep sitting down. So it's a really neat hack on the chair that I just kind of had lying around. And that sort of gives me a way to make the sort of higher quality, like, voice output. And then finally, I have a mic stand. I'm not using it today. It is just a simple tripod with a sort of, one of these little screws on the top. They all have the same. This was an iPhone tripod, I think. I think it was one of these circle lights that didn't work, and then it turned into an iPod stand and all sorts. It's just like, people have these lying around. It's totally fine. Next up in the room is lighting. The common pattern I mostly enjoy is to set up like two lighting scenes. There's like the background and the foreground. So for the background, this light here in the background is a $5 colored light that I got from a hardware store. I've got another one just off here that's red. And they work pretty nicely to provide a sort of like background gradient-y color. And then I mix that with a Philips Hue light strip, which provides a much stronger closer background color that's nearby, that sort of provides the color focus in a way that the other one doesn't. And those work well to sort of provide like a nice background balancing color. And then on the foreground, I use a mix of two major light sources. I've got my screens in front of me. This first one, I use like some software like Figma to sort of decide how much color I want from this side. So if you can see here, I can switch it to white, and I can switch it to black, white, black. But I tend to kind of keep that like pretty orangey. Like the white makes me look vampire-ish, and the yellow gives a nice hue-ish. And then I have a main foreground floodlight. That is just a Philips Hue on a lamp. It also is pretty white, but I use it to reflect light off the background onto me to provide a sort of full light, and it doesn't provide too harsh shadows. You can see a pretty strong one there, but it's not enough to be distracting, in my opinion. And so I can control the background of these with a Philips Hue. So if I decide to want to make that redder, which makes it look like I've just come out of the gym, or a different color for the foreground, then I can just change that and have that set up whenever I want, and I can do the same for the background too. So from yellow to like reddish, and then maybe I can add some white there, and then you can get like the sort of mood that you would like by just using like the Philips Hue app. I've been super happy with that setup so far, and those two can work in combination to sort of get your video to look like how you want it to do. So I edit with ScreenFlow. ScreenFlow is an app that I bought back in 2011 and I've continually updated since. It does a really good job of like the simple stuff, and it lets you do pretty complicated editing in a pretty logical way. So I've been pretty happy to work with that. I originally experimented with going on to like Final Cut Pro or some of these other like very serious video editing software tools, and realistically, I don't think I need any of that stuff yet. And as Spoonful is a like Mac only software, then it's like pretty well made, and it feels like how it works like how I expect it to work, which has worked out pretty reasonably for me for the almost decade that I've used it. For my scripts, I tend to write the majority of my script ahead of time. There's a GitHub repo, you can go see them. I think it's just orta/YouTube. And then the scripts generally provide this sort of framework for how I speak, and I allow myself to amend things on the spot. I want these scripts to sort of feel more natural than forced, in part because I want to make it feel a bit more like a discussion one-on-one with like someone that's off camera that's just nodding. I prefer that to like a very authoritative like conference style talk where it's like very obvious I'm giving you information. And so I want a level of unpolishedness in there to kind of add a sense of authenticity to just being like, this is just us having a casual conversation. And that's kind of how I write my blog posts, so that's kind of how I want my videos to feel. I'm not like a polished YouTuber that works full time on this stuff. I'm just a random dude that's making a Saturday morning YouTube video, hopefully before everyone gets up and starts turning on the AC and making noise upstairs. So in pre-recording a few of these videos, I noticed that it was very hard for me to keep my eyes focused on looking at the camera. So the first thing I did was I sort of took the camera and I moved it right next to my screen. So it looks a little bit like that to me, where all my notes are here and then the camera is there, and I try and use one of these mice, like the Apple Magic Mouse, to sort of scroll the script as it goes along. And that gives me the ability to sort of not have to flick back and forth, or more importantly, not have to memorize the entire like video thing ahead of time and be perfect with it. It's not brilliant perfect, but I'm also not aiming for brilliant perfect. I'm aiming for like, this is good enough. I can get my notes if I need them, but I can also speak them as I do it. It's kind of how I do conference talks. I use the titles as like a sort of rough point to start a conversation, and then just keep flicking through titles as though like they're notes in a larger talk, rather than being like the talk and all of my notes are there ahead of time. And so that's my general setup. To get set up like this, it costs somewhere about $1,000. So it was like $120 for a mic, $550 for a camera, $120 for the cam link, and then around $150 for lighting. So it comes in, somewhere over $1,000, and looking this casual ain't that cheap. And for me at least, like, this is stuff that I've just been buying incrementally over the years, that eventually I just sort of brought together and said, all right, this is how I'm going to figure out how the setup works. And if price is a blocker for you, like, I can bet there are cheaper and close enough to be good, like, options on stuff like the mic, the camera, the lighting, but I'm not sure you can avoid using a HDMI capture card at this point. So I think it's really cool to take some time off to go and learn a different skill and try and figure out how all these things can come back together. I think that it's pretty valuable to learn how to do like the high quality YouTube style videos, because like, especially in a world where like conference talks are now done entirely digitally, this setup that I make for the YouTube videos is the same setup that I would use for giving a conference talk nowadays. And so if you're trying to figure out your AV setup, like, write a comment saying how you're doing it and what's interesting. Otherwise, the usual, like, subscribe, blah blah blah, hit the bell, and I'll see you later. Have a good one. Ciao.